Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to Bullony Basketball. I am here with a special guest this week, my guy, the biggest Nuggets fan I know, Willy G. How's it going, my man?
I'm good, man. Always a pleasure to talk hoops with you. So, excited to talk some ball and, give my 2 cents on some topics, man. How you doing?
Doing pretty good. It's been like I think 2 weeks since my last episode because I didn't have one last week. It was my birthday. I was celebrating. So
Golden
you know
year.
we're yep we're
There you
back
go.
in the mix now. And yeah, there was a lot of stuff. See, this is why I don't take weeks off because when I take a week off, it just bombards with so much NBA news.
Mhm.
But some of the most important stuff we're going to talk about today, and I think the first thing we have to talk about is these 70-point games that are just coming out like left and right, two in 1 week. That's crazy. And not only that, but like there was when Joel Embiid got 70 and Cat got 62. That was like I think the fourth day in NBA history that there were two 60-point games on the same day. And then when Luka dropped 73, you also had Devin Booker dropping 62 as well. So just like that many high scoring games, like so quickly, it seems like there's 40 bombs every night. As we're recording this, Tyrese Maxey currently has 40 in his game, and Jalen Brunson had 40 tonight. Donovan Mitchell had 45 the other night. So it's like everyone's scoring like crazy. So my biggest thing to ask you is with this rapid scoring today, is it more so with the NBA a matter of the offenses are getting better, or do you think it's the defense is getting worse, or is it a combination of both?
I think it's honestly a combination of both. I do think that a lot of teams are on the defensive side, maybe not putting in the effort that, we're used to seeing in years past. But I also think that the game is just so fast now. The 3 point is so important in today's game. Making sure the floor is properly spaced and so on. So it's a combination of both. It is insane, right? That we had a couple 60-point games and a couple 70-point games in the span of a few days. So that is insane. Um, I know that when Kobe had his high scoring games, right, that was just him on a tear that season. But there's just so many players that, like you mentioned, right? We got Brunson and Halliburton, and like the aforementioned Luca and Joel and Cat and D Book. So I'd say it's a combination of both, but I think it's also just the capacity of the offensive players today, and the speed that they play the game and how much ball movement there is. So you know, maybe a couple years back with the way these guys are playing on the offense, they probably have 50-point games, maybe 60 points as opposed to 70 points in the Luca and Embiid topic. But just the way they're playing, maybe offense is the right answer here.
Yeah, I think I agree that it's a combination of both. I think it's just more so like obviously with the floor spacing abilities that you have today and like it's more
Mm-hmm.
utilized. I think scoring is going to be higher naturally, especially if players are translating the efficiency that they once had like around the rim or in the mid range from 3 point land. So if you're doing that naturally, like you're gonna be scoring threes at the same rate that we were scoring twos in the past, or at least from the mid range. And that's really the biggest difference, I think. Like there's some anomalies today, like from my Bulls, DeMar DeRozan loves the mid range, but like there's for the most part, a lot of people have shifted that mid range game into the 3 point line, and on top of that, like too, just with the calls today, like I think defenses maybe don't get the benefit of the doubt with the referees and the calls. It more so just favors the offense, and you got to think that's maybe a free 2 points, free 3 points, and it's
Mm-hmm.
stopping the clock as well. So I think like that's another reason why you're seeing such rapid scoring. It's funny because like obviously the pace of the game today is faster than it was maybe 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. But even though we don't like I guess have like exact numbers on like the pace of the 60s, you always hear that it was more up tempo and stuff like that. And I think you're kind of
Mm-hmm.
seeing that, but at the same time there's a 3 point line added. There's maybe more stoppages because it's more in favor of the offensive player, like the rule changes, and because of that you're seeing a lot of people who score more. Um, but yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna mention and like you said, right, the addition of the 3 point line, analytics, right, say that mid range shots are analytically speaking, a terrible shot, right? Because if it's not a 3-point shot or a wide open layup, you shouldn't be taking that. And since you brought up the 60s, I mean, everybody was doing layups, right? I mean, sure, there are some highlights of a couple players doing mid range. Well, I guess what we would call mid range today, right? But doing outside the paint shots. So that's the thing that I was just gonna say, right? Is analytically speaking, which I obviously grew up on watching Carmelo with the Nuggets and so on, and he had that killer jab step in the mid range game, and like you mentioned, DeMar is a monster from the mid range. I personally think that the mid range is still a good shot, but when, like you said, right, when you can up one additional point per shot, per shot made if you're shooting the three, that's why the game is so fast, and not to blame Steph and Clay and the Splash Brothers era and prime Warriors dynasty, but they showed the NBA that fast-paced shooting threes and running and gunning, as they say, at least right now, it's the way to play, right? Yeah, there are some players that might show there's different ways to play basketball. For example, Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic that are big guys that might not be the fastest, but they still dominate inside the paint, mid range, and the 3-point land. But at least the Warriors formula right now with how the game is and the defensive schemes that are out there is probably the way to play right now.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be crazy to see like what the NBA has in store over the next like couple of years. Because like now we got people saying like we've had 4 70-point games since the start of last year, right? So it's like now we got people saying like who's gonna be the first to drop 100, who's gonna be the first to pass Kobe's 81 or something like that. And it's like I feel like honestly like when the 100 would be extremely impressive, and you would almost have to play like a perfect game for that. But like even if someone passed the 81, I feel like that would create shockwaves because it's like that's the most we've seen on film. Like we don't have film of the 100-point game, and like that's the biggest knock people have against it. So like I don't know. I think it's just gonna be crazy. We're gonna have to see what happens, and for all we know, maybe if like what if they added like a 4-point line like 40 years from now? Like that's really gonna create some havoc. I think like with this. I don't think they should, but
No, and I agree. I don't think they should, stretch it out to 4-point land. I think if they were to do something like that, and not to throw any disrespect at the Lakers, but I think if somebody, let's say, does break 100 points, right, and there's a 4-point line, however many years that's down the line, I think you'd have to have an asterisk, after that career high, because to get to 100 points, that's only 25 made 4-point land shots, and obviously if you make, let's say, 15 and some threes and, obviously some layups and so on, it's going to be a lot easier. You probably only need about 30 shots to actually get there realistically, 30, 35, which we see players taking that number of shots anyways in today's game. So if they were to add a 4-point line and somebody breaks, 100 points, asterisk on that for me, unless it's somebody like DeMar DeRozan type player, right? Whoever that might be down the line that doesn't shoot threes, that doesn't shoot, 4-pointers, whatever we're going to call it in that future if it happens, which again, like I said, I'm totally with you. I don't think they should add that on, but I think they have to have an asterisk for that.
Yeah, I'm right there with you because a 4-point line, no, I don't know. I can't get really behind that. But yeah, if you want though, we can move on with you were talking about putting an asterisk by those scoring games, and I think maybe the biggest asterisk with All-Star Weekend, which we're gonna get into later, the biggest All-Star snubs, but the fact that there is a chance that Doc Rivers could be coaching the Eastern Conference All-Star team, and he just got the job earlier this week, last week, and he hasn't even won a game with the team yet. Like, I guess, obviously with the hiring of Doc Rivers, yeah, he's experienced. He probably doesn't have the most success other than the 1 year in Boston. But tell me, what do you think? Can we trust Doc Rivers in coaching the Bucks? And I guess if he does get the All-Star coaching nod, do you think he should be coaching or no?
I guess I'm gonna answer the second question first. If he does get the All-Star coaching role, I don't think it's fair. Especially if when All-Star comes around, let's say he has a losing record. I don't know exactly how many games the Bucks have before All-Star Weekend, but let's say they're at, I don't know, 3-6, for example, 3-8, whatever record they might have at that time, but it's a losing record, right? it wouldn't be fair. It wouldn't be fair to the previous coaching that was in the team. So I don't think it's fair for him to have that. But at the end of the day, if it's his position to get it because of where the team is at, then it kind of is what it is. But I don't think it's fair. To answer your first question and to how I would feel if I'm a Bucks fan, I'd be pissed. I'd be livid, honestly. I mean, apart from the '08, Celtics that won the championship, Doc Rivers has blown what three to 3-1 leads, in the course of his career. Had a stacked Clippers team. Yes, there were some injuries and things like that, right? But never got them over the hump. You know, I don't think his firing with Philadelphia might have been as justified as some other people say. But ultimately, right, they didn't live up to their expectations. There's, other conversations that can be had about there, right, with Ben Simmons and Embiid and so on. But he's not like you're not bringing in Phil Jackson, for example. You're not bringing in a coach of his success, right? You're not even bringing in, I don't know, let's say Larry Brown, if he's still coaching, that might have not won a championship, but, at least he had a decent amount of success. And Doc, not only has he not had the success, I mean, his teams have always been stacked, as far back as I can remember. Apart from his coaching days in the Magic, but like I said, right, with the Celtics, with the Clippers, with the Sixers, and now the Bucks, I mean, he's got at least 2, 3, Hall of Famers on those teams, and he's just flaming out. So if I'm a Bucks fan, you know, I'd be livid. I think I would have given the last coaching regime more time. It was a rookie head coach. Uh, I don't think they were as bad as they made it seem. I mean, I didn't catch too many Bucks games apart from a couple of them, but just looking at the record and so on, I think they would be on pace, especially when you're incorporating Damian Lillard into the offensive schemes and not having a defensive point guard stud like Drew Holiday. But I don't know. I mean, if they think Doc Rivers is the man, I don't think his track record proves it, but that's just my 2 cents.
And when you were listing coaches too, it's like, and not even Nick Nurse, who they could have
Mhm.
had. Like, honestly, like what was Giannis thinking? Like, and it's like going after a guy. You got to realize where you're at with your team. You just won a championship a few years ago, and then the year before Middleton was hurt. Last year you were hurt. Like, if I'm them, I'm thinking in the back of my head, well, if we're healthy, we're still a team that should win the championship. Really, if I'm them, I should be thinking we would have won the championship if I'm on that team. But it's like you go after a coach that has no experience. You give up on Budenholzer. It's like realistically, what's the difference between Mike Budenholzer and Doc Rivers? They both have Doc Rivers has one championship, but how many times has he failed compared to Bud?
Mhm.
It's like you almost would have been better just keeping Mike Budenholzer. But and he has more like consistency with the system. It would have been easier to bring in a guy like Damian Lillard, and you didn't see that with Adrian Griffin. And I don't know if you're gonna see that really with Doc, but like with Doc and like just with the point of coaching the All-Star game, and you said it's unfair. I agree. I don't think it's fair. I feel like Adrian Griffin should be coaching the All-Star game if the Bucks are up there. Obviously, it's
Mhm.
not even guaranteed, but like think about it. They were like 3 games up. Like it seemed like a certified lock because Joe Mazzulla can't coach it because he coached it last year. Like the
Right.
Bucks were like separated from everyone else. Now you got the Knicks creeping up. You got the Cavaliers creeping up. Like it's if he doesn't get it, he only has himself to blame. And if the Knicks and Cavs lose, like I think on like Saturday, it doesn't even matter if the Bucks won a game with Doc Rivers. He's coaching the All-Star game. Like
Yeah,
that's you just did nothing, Like that's like getting an A+ on the group project that
that's what I
you
was gonna
you
say.
did
Mhm.
absolutely nothing for but write your name on it.
Yeah,
So,
Doc came in and just before they handed it to the teacher, he's like, "Let me just put my name real quick on here and slide on through to them," because yeah, he has no, he didn't contribute to any of the wins, right,
mm,
that they've had that helped them be into the top 4 seeds right now in the East. But it is what it is, right? Like I said, I don't think it's fair. Doc Rivers, I'm not a big fan of him. I liked him on commentary. I did think he had some unbiased basketball takes on the games that he was doing with ESPN earlier this year. But by no means, do I think I don't think he deserved. I feel terrible saying that, right? Because I'm not trying to be a hater or anything like that, but I don't think he deserved to be on a coaching on contender team. I think maybe for him it should have been I don't know, an up and coming team, something. I don't know, maybe like the Hornets. I know Steve Clifford came out with some comments today where he's just like, we're just not talented enough or something like that, right? So I don't know, maybe he needs to go back. What I will say, for Doc, this is his legit last chance, right? If the Bucks don't win a championship or make it at least to the Eastern Conference Finals, whether that's this year or next year, after that he's not going to get another coaching opportunity. At least I don't see a team taking a chance on him. But I don't know. There definitely were better options. I know Terry Stotts was with Adrian Griffin's coaching staff, and then he left before the year started with the Bucks. I thought he was unjustly fired when he was with the Blazers, right? I thought he did a decent job, really good job. They just, always had something come up from injuries, right? Just something did not help them get over the hump. Of course, when they pulled the trade for CJ McCollum and they traded him over to the Pelicans, so when they got Lillard, I was like, maybe they'll get Terry Stotts, right? So I don't know. I mean, not a fan of Doc as a coach and just putting his name on the group project, but it's his last chance. We'll see what happens with him.
I think you even gave him more credit than I would have. I don't know if I even liked him on the commentary. I mean, like maybe sometimes the takes were not terrible, but like just from hearing the voice, like I just couldn't.
The raspy voice he has, yeah.
Yeah.
I think I just got used to Mark Jackson's terrible takes, and because Mark Jackson has some bad takes where I'm just like, dude, are we watching the same game? But maybe that's why it was a nice change. But again, not trying to be a hater. If I'm a Bucks fan, those are just my 2 cents. Where I'm just like, why? Why are we blowing it up on the coaching staff when we're building something nice with a rookie coach?
Hey, if ESPN needs people that can commentate games, look right here. We got 2 people that are more than capable of doing that job. But yeah, no. I don't know. I think I even saw a stat like Doc. I think Doc has coached like 28 All NBA players, and he only has 1 ring to show for it, which is crazy. So I don't know. And I kind of like the Bucks. Like Dame and Giannis are 2 of my 5 favorite players probably in the NBA right now. So I want them to succeed. Like they're one of the teams I shouldn't even say if. The Bulls aren't winning a championship. So like if other teams that I would hope to win, they're one of those teams that I'm like, I wouldn't mind seeing them win. But I just don't know how to feel with Doc Rivers there. So yeah.
I agree. I was just gonna say one more thing on the Doc side. On the Doc side, sorry. I don't know if he's the right coach for Damian Lillard. As far as looking at the point guards that he has been successful with, let's say Rajon Rondo, right? CP3 in his prime.
Like pure point guards.
Yeah, they're pure point guards, and Lillard's a shoot first point guard. He's not gonna. Yeah, I know he gets his passes out there and things like that, right? But you got the point guard, and then you got Dame time, right? Totally different aspects of the world of players. So, I think the Bucks might have pulled the trigger a little bit too soon without thinking just exactly what Drew brought to the team, right? As far as the role he was playing with them and probably being their second most important player. I mean, you can make the conversation right that Middleton was Robin as to Giannis's Batman, but I mean Drew was, Robin light maybe, but we'll see. We'll see. I still think they are at least talented enough to make it to the second round. They should make it to the second round. If not, someone's going to get clapped literally the second the game ends probably. But I guess making it to the Eastern Conference Finals just really depends on standings, right, and who they match up with. But we'll see.
I think the most comparable, and it's not even really a great comparison, but like that what Doc has coached that's most comparable to Dame right now is probably like when he coached Ray Allen, like with the Celtics. And even that, it's like at the end of it, Ray Allen got shifted to the bench and they put Avery Bradley in over him. So it's like, I don't know. I wouldn't feel comfortable if I'm Dame. All this change, you're already moving your whole life to Milwaukee. Now you got a whole new coach. I don't know. But yeah, if you want though, we can move on. We can talk about a team that's been doing pretty well as of late. And as we mentioned, their coach has a chance to be the coach representing the East for the All-Star game this year, and that is the New York Knicks. A little bit of tough news, though, is that Julius Randle, it was announced that he's dislocated his shoulder. He's probably going to be out through All-Star weekend. However, the way that Jalen Brunson has played, and, ever since they got OG Anunoby, this team has flipped a switch Precious Achiuwa, I think, had like 15 rebounds today. Dante DiVincenzo's been cooking. Like, so they've just been playing really well. Josh Hart, I think, had his first career triple-double the other night. So what do you make of this Knicks team? And while Julius Randle is out, do you think that they can keep it pushing?
I hate that I like them. I hate that I love watching these guys plays. I think they're on an 8-9 game winning streak. I think they won
9
today,
after
right?
tonight.
Yeah, so they're on a 9 game winning streak, and sipping that haterade. But I was not a fan of Brunson when he was with the Mavs, and now just watching him, and I think it was last week when they cooked the Nuggets by like 40 something points, and just watching how well that team is, man. I hate that I hate that I'm not rooting for them, but it's kind of like with the Thunder too. I hate that I'm enjoying their success, and even to an extent I'm enjoying it for their fan bases, so for any Knicks fans out there that are on this high right now, enjoy it, because that team is fun to watch. And when Tibbs got hired to the Knicks right after he left Minnesota, I thought he was gonna season or two and then be gone, because the Knicks have had such high recent turnover throughout the last decade or so with players and coaching staff. So I thought Tibbs was just gonna be another 2-season coach, and then on to the next one we go, and just players in and out like it has been. But they're I don't know if I would say this team is a championship caliber team this year. It's definitely going to be a problem in the playoffs. But man, like I said, I hate that I'm enjoying their success. I hate that I'm enjoying them, watching them, be successful. But I'm happy for their fan bases. The people in New York deserve it. Just coming off the pandemic and so on a couple of years back, and just I was actually I know at the Nuggets game last season when it was at the Garden, and just feeling the atmosphere and the vibe. I'm really happy for their fan base. But I think they're going to struggle a little bit without Randle. I think I saw that they're going to reevaluate him in about 3 to 5 weeks, I think is what I saw, if I'm not mistaken.
I think like 3-ish weeks. I think it's like right around All-Star weekend.
Yeah, so hopefully it's nothing too long term, not just for the success of the Knicks, but Randle, I don't think he's an All-Star this year if he was healthy, but he is still a great player, right, and a big piece of what they do out there. But I think if he is out for some time, they'll struggle. But just really depending how long it takes him to be back, is gonna say where they finish out east. But Precious Achiuwa, man, I felt he was just a throw-in for the trade with OG. He's contributed so much with them. And I remember when he was with the Heat, I always liked him, and then he went up to Toronto, and I feel like maybe he was a little bit lost, not maybe his right role right with the Raptors, but now with the Knicks. I believe he's from Newark, so maybe being back home for him, it's just, rejuvenated him in a way to be productive. I mean, I know he's only been in the year for, I think this is his 4th or 5th season. I think 4th. But ultimately he's been a nice piece to them.
Yeah, I mean, they just have they have a lot of players that I think you just, on paper, you wouldn't really think I don't really expect much out of them. And I think that's, for me, the longest thing I said about the Knicks is that could they be a playoff team? Of course. But I think there's a little window for how far they can push with their effort that I just don't know if their talent could make up for it. But I'm looking at the rest of the East right now, and the Bucks have big concerns with, obviously getting Doc Rivers. They're kind of in a weird spot. The Sixers, we're going to get to news about Joel Embiid, but now they have some bad news coming up. And then the Celtics, I mean, they just lost a terrible game at home tonight to the Lakers without their 2 best players. So it's how can you kind of trust these teams as the top teams when there's other teams like the Knicks or the Cavs or the Pacers that have been playing really well lately? So it's and it's just kind of hard, So thinking about the Knicks though, I think ever since they got OG Anunoby, they've been the best defense in the league, which I know he's missed the last couple games, but that to me should almost be he should be in consideration for all defensive. You basically transformed the defense because it was really slow to start the year, and that was even when Mitchell Robinson was healthy. Then he went down, it really took a dive, and then OG came in, and now it's been flipped a switch. Isaiah Hartenstein's been great. Randle's really kind of stepped it up over the last couple weeks prior to when he did get hurt. And then, just with Jalen Brunson, it's just funny because when he got signed, they're that's the worst contract of the offseason. And you could argue that it's the best contract of that offseason now because he's getting like maybe what like 20 million a year for the next
Yeah,
like
that's funny.
3 years or something like this after this. Like he's a max contract player, you know? And I've even said like I was saying the other day like when they announced the starters like I know Halliburton's been great for the Pacers, but he's missed some games. And I know Dame is Dame, but maybe it hasn't quite felt like normal Dame stuff. But like to me, the Eastern Conference starters should have been Donovan Mitchell and Jalen Brunson. Just with what they've done, they've put their teams kind of on their back, and that's why you're seeing these two teams like come up here in the standings where they really shouldn't have been. Like everyone would counted out the Knicks when they were getting injured and stuff like that. They're like, nope, they're just a mediocre team once again. Like we shouldn't have believed in the Knicks. And then same thing for the Cavs when they had Mobley and Garland go down. So like that's why I think like what Jalen Brunson's done, like he should be top 10 in the MVP race, somewhere in the mix there,
The
and
MVP race.
top 10, yeah.
Ooh,
Like
I mean,
he's not a like I wouldn't say he's an actual MVP contender, but I
okay.
think he should be like at least 9 or
Get some
10 in the
bullshit there.
MVP. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
Um.
no, like I said, man, maybe it's just the haterade in me because I don't. When he went over to New York, I thought it was like you said, one of the worst signings of that offseason, right? And overpaid.
Mhm.
I thought he probably should have stayed with the Mavericks, but obviously he made the not just for his personal life because I know he's from New York and so on, right? But a great career move for him. I don't know if I would say he's better this season than Halliburton. I know with his injury, right, and so on, that he's missed. I think it was 11 games or so. I know he came back tonight, right, but he missed a decent amount of games there in a row.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, Tyrese is just something else. I love watching Tyrese play, but Dame, like you said, Dame is probably just because it's that name, right? That maybe that's why Brunson didn't get the starter nod over Dame, but it's exciting to see what the Knicks are going to do this year. I do think that the East is wide open, right? Like you mentioned, question marks with the Bucks, question marks with the Sixers, question marks with the Celtics. Even if KP and crew can get it done, was KP really the missing piece? I don't think he was, but we'll see that in the playoffs. Um, if you recall, we talked about the Cavs last season, you and I,
Mhm.
and I said the Cavs are an amazing team, right, and championship contenders. I still think I wouldn't be surprised if they come out of the East, and they're content if this fall their way, right, it matters. Either of those two teams, but I think particularly the Cavs can make out of the East and challenge for the NBA championship in the finals.
Yeah. The only thing I will say about the Knicks, though, and it's my only concern, is that they have a great collection of guys that have all been playing really well together, and a lot of guys, I would say, a really deep team. But when the rotations in the playoffs slim down, and those guys that are 6, 7, 8 need to play as good as maybe the 6, 7 or so on the other teams, that's the only concern. You know what I mean? Because like there's teams around the league that have a great 6 man, great seventh man. It's just they don't have that maybe 8, 9, 10, 11 that the Knicks do. But in the playoffs, those guys aren't getting hardly any minutes. So that's
Starters.
kind of the biggest thing. But one thing I will say though about this year is that Tom Thibodeau has a reputation as one of the best defensive coaches in the league. He's been a really good offensive coach this year. If you watch the Knicks, they're moving the ball probably like a top 3 team in the league, especially in the last like month or 2 months. So that's the biggest surprise, I guess, for me. Um, but yeah, I don't know if you have anything else you want to add before we move on.
The only thing I'll just touch on the rotations. Is Mitchell out for the whole year? I think he's out for the rest of the
Mm,
season, right, Mitchell Robinson?
yeah, I believe so.
So I'm guessing your rotation would probably be what the starters, and then Josh Hart and Hartenstein off the bench. I'm assuming. So if you go 7 deep, 8 deep,
I think they've, yeah, I mean,
and Precious Chula.
yeah, like Harden. I think Achua. They might have started both of them tonight because they were really low on numbers. But
Mm-hmm.
I think they were starting Hartenstein. Achua would also get some run. OG, Randle, Josh Hart, DiVincenzo, Brunson, and probably like Miles McBride. Maybe those are probably the 8 I would see. I don't know if I'm forgetting anybody. Yeah.
No, I think with the injury right to Robinson, I think that's who they would throw out there, and now that you mention it, with it being a shortened rotation, maybe there are more question marks, right, on the Knicks.
Mm.
Uh, but I don't know. Like I said, it'll be interesting to see how far they can get. I stick by the statement that I mentioned that the East is wide open, right? So if things fall their way, they can make a run.
Mm.
And again, City deserves it. The fan base deserves it. Um, so let's see what happens.
And Quentin Grimes too. I forgot to add him. So
Yeah,
like
right.
they got about like 9 or so guys, but it's just like those. Yeah, that's what I'm most concerned about come
Mm.
playoff time. But they could prove me wrong. They proved me wrong already so far this year. So I guess there's that. But yeah, if you want to move on, we can talk about the next topic, which is the All-Star reserves were announced today, so we officially know who made the All-Star team. Now, obviously, we just talked about Julius Randle's hurt, and Joel Embiid is hurt now, so there's going to be openings. But with what we know right now and what was announced, who would you say is the biggest NBA All-Star snub?
So I always, every time we collab, man, I say I'm not going to try to bring in the Nuggets, but I have to throw Jamal Murray in here. And I know he's been hurt a lot at the start of the season, and um, he's kind of had a semi-inconsistent year, which Jamal Murray, right, usually always historically comes out to a slow start of the year. But it's probably was his strongest, year on the games that he has played this year. The reason why I think he's the biggest All-Star snub, and forget just this season. I'm gonna just kick it back to last year when Jokic was up for the 3 MVPs, and everybody was saying, even though the MVP is a regular season award, there was like, we can't give him 3 in a row because he hasn't gotten it done in the playoffs, right? He hasn't gotten it done when it matters, even though they had made the conference finals in the bubble and the second round and so on before that. But there was like, he hasn't made it, he hasn't gotten it done in the playoffs.
Mm.
Well, Jamal is probably historically the highest run when we talk about just regular season, the playoffs, and what beast he becomes when the playoffs and when the game matters, right? That look he gets in his eyes, and just, I don't know, probably at his peak in a playoff game, he's probably a top 5 player in the NBA, and I don't even think that's a stretch. I mean, Jamal at his peak is something else. So the reason why I bring that up,
he outplayed the Lakers' top 2 players
yeah,
last playoffs, and that's
exactly.
LeBron James and Anthony Davis. So but yeah, continue. Sorry.
I'll play Jimmy Buckets, I'll play
Yep.
all these guys, right? So I guess that's why, and again, not because I'm a Nugget fan and I'm trying to just take out the biasy of it, right? If the reason why you were telling me that Jokic couldn't get a third MVP in a row is because he hasn't gotten it done in the playoffs, why not reward a player who, does get it done in the playoffs, obviously his teammate, and just has a slow start in the regular season, but after All-Star break, playoff time, he obviously knocks it up, to a whole new level. And just simply the fact that, Nikola Jokic has never had a All-Star teammate. I mean, he had Paul Millsap, right, but wasn't an All-Star that year. He had just came off the year when he was an All-Star with the Hawks, his final year with Atlanta, but he's never played alongside another current All-Star. So that to me is, I feel, the biggest Star snub, because again, guy that's gotten it done in the playoffs, reward him for that, give his teammate, hey, the recognition that we know it's not just you. I mean, sure, Nikola Jokic is the best player on earth right now touching a basketball, but, he didn't get it done by himself. He got it done with Jamal. He got it done with, Michael Porter and Aaron Gordon, but Jamal was he was the second reason as to why he got it done. So I think I would have personally liked to see him be rewarded for that. And, like I said, he's not no scrub either. So I think he should have been in the All-Star reserve this year.
And what's annoying too is, just, I know you were kind of also bringing up Jokic a little bit, but what's annoying is that, I agree with your point too, where it's like, if that was kind of the narrative around the Nuggets, it's like, why not reward a guy like Jamal, especially based on that. We kind of you could argue maybe that Drew Holiday making the All-Star team last year probably wouldn't have even happened if they didn't win the championship 2 years before that. And that's no knock against Drew Holiday, because I think he's great, but you could argue there were players doing more, maybe putting up better numbers on slightly worse teams or something like that. And so, with that, it's like, the thing that's annoying is that, like, watch what's going to happen is that when Jokic it's time to vote for the MVP, and they're going to say about Jokic, oh, he has Jamal Murray on his team, he has Aaron Gordon on his team. But you guys are saying that these guys, don't show up in the regular season, like you guys are more like happy with the Thunder supporting cast or whatever. It's like maybe if Embiid is still eligible or whatever, if he was still eligible, the Sixers supporting cast and like Tyrese Maxey and stuff, the Celtics, they got 5 All-Star caliber players, like whatever it may be, and they would hold it against him. Like that's the annoying thing to me. So I just wanted to kind of say that. But I do agree that Jamal Murray, definitely a snub. He's definitely an all-star, and in the playoffs, he's a superstar, I would say. But to me, I think the biggest snub has to be De'Aaron Fox. I mean, not, and I'll even include Sabonis in here, but if I had to pick, I would pick Fox. Like, how are the Kings a top 5 seed and they don't get one all-star? And it's not even just that, but like Fox is arguably having a better year this year. I know his field goal percentage is down, but he's scoring better. He's shooting the ball way better. Maybe in the clutch, he's maybe not as eye-popping as last year, but still, like he's having a really good year. And I think people are already bored of the Kings. They were good for their first time in forever last year. Now it's almost like it's expected, and they don't get a single all-star. That's a shame to me. And even for Sabonis, and I've been one of the first people to criticize Sabonis, saying he's not as good as advertised by the media. And I think a lot of the fans kind of agree with that. But, I mean, the fact that neither of them made it is kind of insane to me. And I also think it's I don't know. Like, I don't know what De'Aaron Fox has to do to get recognition that he deserves in the NBA either, because he seems like one of those guys that falls into that mold of just like, like he's just kind of there, but it's whatever. I think another guy that kind of falls in that mold is Trae Young, and I think Fox was playing better this year than Trae Young. Granted, they're in different conferences, but like you could argue Trae Young maybe was more deserving too, just because maybe the East isn't quite as impressive. So like. And near the end of the reserve lineup, I guess. But Trae Young, this is a guy averaging like 27 and 11. Yeah, his team is terrible, but how much can you fault that really on him? I mean, he's still like hanging around like a play-in spot, and it's like you just rewarded 2 guys on the Lakers, and they're sitting like right there tied with like 10th. So I don't get it. You rewarded the Warriors. They have someone who's like they're the 12th seed, and you rewarded them with an all-star. So it's just kind of, I don't know. It's just kind of dumb. I don't know if you had any other, like, in particular names that didn't make it. You were like, maybe they should have.
I think since the All Stars was just announced today, right, the reserves, I honestly felt that this was gonna be the year that Jamal got an All Star spot, and when he did it, that's why that's the name that I'm like, he's a snub, seeing that De'Aaron Fox and Sabonis didn't make it, I think. Like you mentioned, right? The Kings were such a nice story last year with Mike Brown taking over, right, and how fun they were to watch. I think, unlucky for them with the Thunder being so good this year and so fun to watch. I think, the Thunder have just kind of became the NBA's, golden boy baby team that they want to push, for better lack of one, team that's done it right, that's going to do it right. They have 50 bazillion draft picks for the next, I don't know, 6-7 years still. So, they're still going to be building from within the draft, and just a team that they've built around Shea and crew, is nice, and obviously Chet is a monster and so on. But that's probably why the Kings might not be getting that recognition, or it could be like you said. Now there's that expectations for the Kings to be good. They were kind of that nice Cinderella story last season, right? But I always thought that De'Aaron is a star player. But I still think Jamal, for me in particular, would have been the more deserving player. As far as Trae Young, I just can't look at how bad the Hawks are. I know there's still the weaker conference. I know you mentioned the Lakers, getting a couple players in, and that could just be because it's it's the big bad Lakers, right? And everybody wants them to be in the contending status. And I don't know if them winning the in-season tournament even might have had something to do with it, right? But I mean, yeah, he's been killing it, but it's on a way weaker team and a way weaker conference. So I'm not as upset about Trae Young. Even then, though, he's a player that's been an all-star in the past. So that doesn't, bite me as bad as, say, De'Aaron Fox missing it or Jamal Murray missing it.
Yeah, I mean, I do think Trae Young will eventually get in. Like, he'll probably replace Randle with his injury, but, like, I don't know. I just feel like he still should have made it over Randle. And that's no disrespect to Randle, but I just feel like Trae Young is been better. Especially you already got Brunson in there, so
Mhm.
that's I guess like what I was saying. Uh, Two other people, like someone else that I said wouldn't make it, but he's been having a great year. Alperen Şengün. It stinks that he's not going to be in it because that's one of my favorite players too. He'll probably be in it though, maybe like next year, the year after. But I think he's kind of a player maybe that you can even appreciate because I think a lot of people compare him
Maybe
to
Jokic.
Jokic. So,
Yeah.
it's just that the Rockets are so far down there, but still, like, yeah, they're 11th, but they're hanging around 500. So it's like it's not like terrible. And you look at that Rockets cast, it's like, how are they even here? you know. Um, and then the other guy I just kind of threw in was Jared Allen. With how good the Cavs have been, I
Yeah.
mean, they rewarded the Knicks with 2 All-Stars. I think Cavaliers have been playing actually slightly better over the last month and a half, and they've been doing it without another former All-Star and another guy who, is probably a top 3 player or so in his draft when he's healthy. So to me, I feel like, Donovan Mitchell's been playing great all year long. And also, I think Jared Allen has played well enough where it's like, well, he could maybe be like that 12th guy, 11th or 12th guy.
Mhm.
So I wouldn't be surprised. There's more than likely, we said like Randle and Embiid will be hurt. They're going to probably put Trae Young in there, but I wouldn't be surprised if Jared Allen is the other one.
Yeah. And I totally love me some Jared Allen, right? I think he's an old school center, not just his look, right, but just the way he hangs around the rim, is always a shot blocking threat. He's obviously that presence down low that has, helped the Cavs be as successful and as fun to watch as they have been, not just this year, but a couple years. And I forgot what year it was. I think it was 21 when he was an All-Star, if I'm not mistaken.
It was
You know,
22 because
22 was it
it was the
22?
same year that my Bulls were good.
There you go. So, he's still, another player that's made an all-star appearance here in the past and so on, and I don't know, we do know for sure, two spots are going to be open, right? As far as on the east side, on the east goes, on the west, I don't know how long-term injuries AD's injury might be. I'm not too concerned as far as LeBron being out for some time, right? Maybe Jamal or I don't know if they would have to replace, position by position out west. At least with two spots being open in the East, right? You can say we'll get a front court and a backcourt player, but if AD is out and you're not going to replace him with the guard, then Sabonis is probably the most deserving at that time. Um, you know, as far as Sengun for the Rockets, I love watching him play. He is baby Jokic. I hate his shot, how slow it is. When he's from the 3-point line, it kind of looks like he's just, like floating it up there even from the three. But, that dude's also a beast, baby Jokic for a reason. But he probably will be an all-star in the coming years, like you mentioned, once the Rockets, which, speak of another fun team, like I said, like the Thunder that, I didn't expect to be fun to watch. And, I know they had a hotter start and kind of cooled off a little bit here.
Mm.
But, it's still nice to see the level of competition in the NBA, which kind of brings us to the first conversation we're talking about, the 70-point games and so on. But the NBA is stacked. Every team has deserving players of all-star positions and, NBA MVP consideration, sorry, to an extent and so on. So I think the league overall is in a great place, and it's fun to see what the future holds for these guys.
Which is why they need to expand the All-Star roster to 15
Yeah.
players. Like, I've been saying this for years. It's like normal teams have 15 to 17 players, but like expand it like from 12 to 15. And then at that point, I feel like you have enough people that are playing. You wouldn't even really need to do injury replacements and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. Like, no disrespect. Then if you're like I'm the 16th guy or 17th guy. At that point, like, we already opened the doors enough. You're not an all-star, unfortunately. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and that's just the harsh reality. But like, if you open it up to 15 people in each conference, I feel like that would make more sense because there's a couple guys that are getting left off every year that deserve it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. But if you want, we can keep it pushing here, talk about the next topic. And this one, I feel like it's kind of a loaded topic because there's a lot of stuff that goes into it. But, obviously, Joel Embiid, he missed a couple games. Some would even say maybe he ducked Nikola Jokic and your Denver Nuggets in Denver. But obviously, he came back against the Golden State Warriors. And near the end of the game, he suffered an injury that Shams is saying is a torn meniscus, but he also then said, I guess it's like not totally confirmed, but the point is, like, he's going to be out through the weekend. He missed this game tonight that just happened. He's probably going to miss more games, and he's probably going to be out of the contention for the MVP award. So, we already had like Tyrese Halliburton saying that the 65-game rule is dumb because he's also very close to missing out on getting All-NBA or being in the MVP running. So I guess with, these players so close to missing it, you also have guys like Jimmy Butler, Devin Booker and stuff that are kind of close-ish. Do you think the NBA was validated with making the 65-game rule? And assuming Joel Embiid is, not going to play 65 games, who do you think could be the MVP?
Yeah, so a lot of, like you mentioned, there's a lot of things in this, in this topic, in this question here. I guess addressing the 65-game rule, I see both pros and cons to it from the fan base perspective. Like, let's say I'm a Pacers fan, right? And Tyrese doesn't make an All NBA team because he doesn't play in 65 games. I mean, you just cost that man $40 million, right? Or whatever his extension eligibility would be if he can get the Supermax. So as a Pacer fan, I mean, granted, sure, I'm not going to get a penny out of those 40 millions, right? But you want to see your guys rewarded for the success, kind of bringing joy back to being a Pacer fan, I imagine, since PG-13 got traded to the Thunder back in the day, right? So I'd be upset on that perspective. But I also feel that, not to name any names, but I feel like the NBA did this to themselves. The players did this to themselves, right? Because let's say you're your average fan, take your family out to a game. It's going to cost you northwards of $600, right? When you take into consideration tickets, concessions. Oh, let me grab a jersey for the kid or whatever, right? Things like that. That's a lot of money that your average fan is, paying. And say, I'll just throw in Embiid for this example, right? I'm a Nugget fan that I bought my ticket, to catch him here in Denver, and then he doesn't play. Because he's load managing, at least at that time, right? That's what the theory was, which I'll touch subject that on him in a second. But as a fan, I feel like, well, I just I got ripped off of the product that I thought I was coming to come see, right? I thought I was coming to see Goliath and two monsters go at it, and instead I'm not seeing that, right? So I see why the NBA has implemented that rule, and to motivate it, right, the players to not load manage. I'm never going to question somebody if they're legitimately hurt. Which switching a little bit to Embiid, with him not playing against Denver here in Denver, I really did thought he was ducking Jokic. I was like, yo, you cook him in Philly. I'm not gonna lie, you outplayed him in Philly. You outplayed him last year in Philly, but then you come back to Denver and you duck him. You don't play. Like, you got to give a chance, a guy a chance to get back at you, right? All right, you did it I did it at your home court. Now come do it at mine, or let me show you up, right? So with Embiid, right, actually being legitimately hurt, it is kind of sus that they let him play against the Warriors. And I don't recall what quarter it was at because I just caught the highlights of that game. And
it was the fourth quarter. It was I think 6 minutes left in the game, or 7 minutes left. In the
quarter. Yeah. So I mean, he shouldn't have been out there, right? There was also that one play that I think he was going out for a block, and he just, I don't know, it looked like he even tripped over his feet also, right? And he tried to block it and just totally missed also. So for Embiid, it is what it is, unfortunately for him. But yeah, that 65, and I know this is a loaded question, so if I'm going over the place, my bad for the people listening out there. But I think the 65 game rule, it makes sense, pros and cons to it. Embiid, I don't think he was ducking Jokic this time, legit injury, and it's unfortunate what happened to him on that aspect of things.
Yeah, I just think mostly with that, I guess I'll start with Embiid and Denver. As a viewer, it also felt like to me that he was ducking. Now he could have been ducking Jokic, but he also could have been ducking the altitude because he hasn't played in Denver in 5 years. And I actually looked through his stats when he played in Denver, and he shoots 36% from the field and 33% from three in Denver. So definitely not great. And I think the only thing I'll say to that is because this injury to Joel Embiid, it's could end their season, but it's not going to end his career. He's going to come back and be Joel Embiid once again. But if he, I think, ever wants to win a championship, and with Denver is one of those teams that's going to be competing every year, and you're gonna have to play in Denver at least like probably 3 times, like you gotta be used to playing in Denver because then if I forget, I was listening to Kenyon Martin say the other day, he was telling a story about when he was with the Nuggets with you guys, and actually it was against my Bulls, and we had like Eddie Curry on the team, and he said how Eddie Curry was like, they just did like one down and back, they were doing a free throw, and he's breathing like heavy, like he was almost about to pass out, and Kenyon Martin's like, "Are you good? Like, are you okay?" Like that's the thing. It's like if you're not experienced with playing in those conditions, it's going to be really hard to get used to, especially if you're playing in the finals there for the first time, and like maybe let's say they make the finals next year, like the first time he's played there in 6 seasons, if he doesn't play in the regular season there next year, like you're just not going to be used to that, and that could hurt you. That's my only thing with that. But with the players saying with the 65 game rule, it did almost feel like Joel played to ensure that he would get to the 65 games, because I don't know if he was 100% healthy actually. But what I will say is like the players kind of complaining about it, saying like Draymond complained like, "Oh, this is stupid. Like this rule is terrible." Maybe because he got suspended and he can't even have a chance. So I don't know if that's the case as well. But the point is, like, there has to be a rule somewhere, whether 65 games is the mark or maybe it should be like 60 or whatever. Like, there has to be a fine line, because I feel like this is maybe more of a like personal topic for me, because who's my favorite player ever? It's Derrick Rose. Right? And everyone talks about like Derrick Rose, like the haters might be like, "Oh, he was a 1-year wonder. Like he just won MVP and that was it." People don't realize that the next season he was the best player on the best team in basketball once again. And just because he missed a decent amount of games, he didn't even make all NBA. Everyone watching basketball would tell you he was the best point guard in the league that year, right? Mm-hmm. And when he was playing, they were on a 67 win pace. So, like, that's the thing that just irritates me. It's like now we're saying, oh, well, it's fine if they miss more games. They should still be in the running for this. But players of the past weren't in the running for this. Even Joel Embiid, when he was a rookie, like, they gave it to Malcolm Brogdon because Joel Embiid missed so many games, right? So I feel like there has to be a fine line that comes about. It sucks, definitely. Like, it does suck for, like, these players, especially if you played, like, 63 games or 62 games. But, I mean, most of the players are falling under the 65 game mark. It's only a couple that are in danger that are deserving of being recognized like that. So that's kind of, I guess, like my biggest thing.
Yeah, no, and I agree totally. I mean, I just remember growing up, right? I never saw Kobe load manage. I never saw KG load manage. I never saw Timmy Duncan load manage, right? You didn't see the I guess the superstars of that time, right? You didn't see them take nights off. Again, if somebody is legitimately injured, well, obviously don't play. But if it's just to, I guess, do injury prevention just because it's the third game in 4 nights, right, type situation, that's where, as a fan, it doesn't sit right with me, which is why I agree, right? There's a consequence to it, right? Whether it's a season award, right, that you're chasing, such as Embiid, who might be chasing the MVP, or, Tyrese, who might be, I mean, 40 million is a lot of money, so I can't blame him being a little bit upset about that, right? But there has to be some consequences. But even then, I mean, I think it was Stephen A. that I was hearing talk about this earlier today or yesterday. I don't remember when. No, it had to be today because Tyrese comments were today. You're still getting 17 games, that you can quote unquote load manage or miss, right? You're still getting a decent amount of games that has that I guess that bubble, right, before you miss out on that award or on those on Tyrese's example, right, that money type situation. So the guys before these guys paved the way to where the league is today. I don't know if teams and players are just more emphasizing player health, I guess, for to mitigate that potential risk. But at the end of the day, basketball is a contact sport, right? Fouls happen all the time, things like that, right? And it's part of the game. So obviously I'm not saying go out there and foul your opponent, but, things can happen, and it's just things that you give and take with the ball. But we'll see, if Tyrese makes it. I do want to switch real quick to what you mentioned about who my MVP
Mm.
would be this year. Right now, that Embiid is more than likely going to miss it. Probably 99% chance that he doesn't qualify for the games. Ironically for me, he was my MVP this year. And I say that because I do think that Jokic should have been the MVP last year, right? Until a
Mm.
certain someone switched the narrative that was totally unacceptable, and what statements he made and comments he made and so on. But to me, Embiid unquestionably this season was going to be the undisputed MVP if he was healthy. Now with him, we assume not, being able to play the required games. Um, I think is going to go to Jokic, and I feel kind of wrong saying this, but it almost feels like a pity MVP for Jokic. I called Embiid's MVP last season an MVP award just because he hadn't won it the prior years and so on, right? And like I mentioned, somebody's statements that switched the narrative. But now it kind of feels that, well, I don't think he's better than Jokic. I still think Jokic is the best player, but the better regular season performer this year can't qualify for it. Let's give it to this guy type thing. So that kind of, it feels wrong to say, but you know, if you're a betting man, bet the farm on Jokic winning the MVP this season. There's no other player unless he too, as a Nugget fan, knock on wood, gets injured and misses it also. But Jokic is usually pretty reliable. There's no other person that I think would win the MVP over Jokic this season.
Yeah, I think the only other person that's like even putting up numbers like that, because I mean the Celtics are up there, but I would say Tatum's numbers maybe aren't quite as eye popping. But the only other person that's even compatible that's up there on a team like that is Shea, but I don't think his numbers compare to Jokic either. So I would agree. I would also say Jokic is my pick then for MVP if Embiid is not eligible. Um, but yeah, I just think like I don't know. Like I just feel like there needs to be there has to be a fine line because um you can't just assume that players are going to miss time and then you're going to put them up there when you haven't done that in the past. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and even like just again like with like my point about D Rose because that's just my guy. But like, I mean, you could check any list from 2011, 2012, even like a year after his MVP year, top 3, top 4, top 5 player in the league. It was him, LeBron, Durant, Kobe, maybe Dwight Howard was in that mix or something like that. And you look at all these other guys, and it's like first team, first team, first team. Oh, and this year he didn't make it. He didn't
Mm-hmm.
make it. Like what happened? And he didn't play enough games. So all I'm saying is, if you're gonna do it with players of the past, you got to do it now. It might suck, but you just got to do it now. But yeah, I don't know. If you want, we can move on. We could talk about next topic, which is a team that's been struggling. I know they did win their most recent game, but they did just have the biggest losing streak in their head coach's tenure there. And I don't know how to feel about this team, and I've talked about it a little bit before, but obviously now there's a new team because ever since they made a trade about a week or two ago, and that is the Miami Heat. It seems like they could be in some serious trouble. They've fallen back into the play-in spot. And so what are your thoughts on the Miami Heat moving forward this season?
Yeah, so I haven't actually caught any games since they made the trade for Terry Rozier. I think it's hard to say because even just last year, right, the Heat were a playing team. Ultimately qualified as the AFC, right, to make the playoffs, and then we saw them, make the finals. So I don't want to say it's a team that I'm going to count out now, but I think maybe it might be time to blow it up. I don't know if it's just time to rebuild. And I struggle saying that because I mean in the bubble, right? They made the finals. They made the finals last year, right, and so on. So maybe it's just a hiccup right now this season and last throughout the regular season. But I don't know if Jimmy Buckets can get it done. I know he's him, but I don't know if he's him. To get the team over the finals, and win a championship. So maybe you know blow it up. Trade. I don't know if I would trade Bam, but you could get some nice pieces back for Tyler Hero, and Jimmy Buckets. Maybe see what Terry Rozier can do for you. I mean, Terry Rozier is still relatively young, compared to I guess what we would call the core of the Heat, right? With Jimmy Buckets and Bam, he's a little couple years younger than them, more in line with Tyler Hero's timeline, a couple years older. But I don't know. I just can't count them out though. Like I said, right? I mean, I'm on the fence about it, right? Whether rebuild, sell while the stocks are high on these players and rebuild, or you know make the playoffs as a playing team again. Still potentially work their ways up to maybe a 5 or 6 seed, and I mean they proved it last year. Like I said, right? They went through the Celtics, they went through the Knicks, they went through the Bucks, and so on. All these teams that they went through, they can do it. They've proven that they can do it. There was only one team that they couldn't do it against, and that was the eventual NBA champions, right? So why not grow on that? But I don't know. It feels like they're struggling. So it's a hard one for me to answer. I'm on the fence today. I'm gonna say, keep it going, but tomorrow I might say blow it up.
It's just like I think a lot of last year too, like they got pretty lucky in the process. I mean, going up against a team like Milwaukee, their best player is injured for most of the series, and when he came back, you could argue he wasn't 100%, and that he was just coming back just to say like, hey, like we're not giving up, like I want to be out there for my team. And then like you go against the Knicks, and it's like they're probably like honestly to me, it felt like the Heat were the favorite in that series, even though they were a lower seed, which might seem crazy. And then you go against the Celtics, and that one was probably their most impressive win in the series. They did have some injuries though, and then obviously they were just no match for your Nuggets. And that's to me like I've said it many times before. I mean, I've even seen it like when he was with my Bulls. Like Jimmy's a pretty good player, but I just don't think he can be the guy that gets you over the top. I don't think he can lead you to a championship because I've seen him so many times have great games over and over again, and then when the moment shines brightest, he just crumbles. And you saw that, especially down the stretch of that game for games 5 for you guys last year. And he did that in game 6 in the other final series. And he's done that plenty of times in the past. So, and he's only getting older. That's the thing too. Yeah. It's like you look at maybe whether it's someone like Trae Young, who if he had a bad playoff series, it's like, okay, well, he's still like 25. If Donovan Mitchell had a bad playoff series, okay, he's still like 26. Like Jimmy Butler, like not necessarily having a bad playoff series, but not being able to get it done. It seems like you've maxed out your potential, and then the fuse runs short, like near the end. Like, but he's also like 33, 34 years old. It's like eventually he's going to start sliding. He's not a guy that can really shoot the ball at an effective level, even though he shot it a little bit better this season. And it might sound like hating, but I don't think he's the same defender he once was either. Like, I know he has the accolades as all defensive for several years. I don't think he's the defender he once was, because if you like see a lot of the games, like he's rarely ever taking the responsibility of the best player on the other team, and more times than not, like he's really not winning that on the defensive end. So I don't know. I just feel like the Heat, are they in trouble? Like if they want to compete, yeah, because I would argue maybe like they have a better chance than my Bulls, but they're almost in the same feeling of my Bulls, where it's like directionless. Like I don't think they're winning a championship. I feel like we've already seen them hit their ceiling, and with other teams in the East, like even teams that you didn't think, like we were talking about with the Knicks and the Cavs, as two of them, the Pacers get Siakam, like these teams could be on the rise. Orlando, they're going to be good for the next several years as well.
Yeah.
So like, and then there's already other teams like Boston, Milwaukee, and Philly that even though they've struggled, like they've been better than the Heat. The Heat have had their own struggles, and people just trust their talent a little more. So I don't think the Heat are going to do much this year. Could they win a playoff series, maybe catch someone off guard? Yeah, they could. I don't even know if they'll get to the finals, but they're not going to win a championship. And I know that's what, Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo and those guys really want. So a lot of people were saying, well, not a lot of people, but I think someone suggested maybe trading Jimmy Butler. Maybe it's time. And it might come to that eventually.
But with Jimmy Butler, I mean, let's just say trade deadline comes, and I don't think they would make the trade this year, but let's say this offseason, right, they make the trade. I don't know who realistically would trade for Jimmy at this point. I mean, you're going to have, your young teams, let's say, for example, a Hornets team, right? Maybe the Thunder decide to cash in with some of their draft picks and send them, let's say Jalen Williams, right, over there to the Heat, a package somewhere like that. As far as a contender go, I don't know a team that has the assets to get a player like Jimmy, right, and so on. It's going to be hard for him to go to a team like that. So
I think the only team that makes sense would be Philadelphia. going back.
Arguably.
Like, I mean, like he likes playing with Embiid. I mean, you'd have to include Tobias Harris, and if you could find a way to make a trade and not have to give up Maxey as well, and you pair those guys together, I mean, that's probably his best chance. I don't know if that would even be a team that wins a championship though.
You'd probably be giving up a lot if you're the Sixers, right? If you're not including Maxey, you know, what I mean, because you're obviously not going to include Embiid. I mean, Tobias Harris is nice, but you know, he's not as nice as he once was. You know, when he
Right.
had some All-Star caliber seasons, and I don't even think we could say them All-Star caliber seasons, but you know, really good seasons, right? So I think that would be hard for that package to come about, but. I mean, I don't know. Maybe Jimmy Buckets is just Robin, right? Maybe Butler's not, like you said. Maybe he's not him, and he's not going to get you over the hump. And I don't know who they could realistically go get and say, all right, you know, Jimmy, you're going to be second fiddle to so and so. You know, they don't have the assets either to go get, you know, a big name to do a two-man star team. You know, especially when you're going to have to give up Bam more than likely for that, right? You're probably going to have to give up Tyler Hero and so on. So, you know. I don't know. I'm not as confident if I'm the Heat. I mean, you still have top 10 coach maybe of all time, right, in Eric Spoelstra. So, you know, I don't think it's blow it up entirely and, you know, kick everybody out type thing. But, you know, definitely explore your options and see what you can find, you know, maybe not this deadline, but in the offseason and, you know, rebuild your team from there.
Yeah, you'd have to include like it'd have to be like Tobias, Melton, Jaden Springer, and probably at least like a couple picks, and you might even have to throw in like another player in there. I think it could get done, like considering what direction Miami wants to go. But they're also not going to take players unless they know that they could buy into the Heat culture. We've seen that before. But yeah, if you want though, we can move on and talk about a little bit of some sad news, I guess, but a retirement with basketball. Former NBA player Marc Gasol officially announcing his retirement. I know it's been quite a moment since he's been in the NBA, but I guess like what are your thoughts on Marc Gasol announcing his retirement from basketball? Really,
well deserved. Enjoy retirement, right? I'm glad he won the championship with the Raptors. His one season there. Um, Hall of Fame career. Got out of the shadow of his older brother, right? Got out of the shadow of Paul's shadow. It's just nice and well deserving that he won the championship. I'm pretty sure you're going to see his number go up in the Raptors down there in Memphis. And just talk about a player that kind of set the mold for some of the big men today. I personally thought he was an extent of Jokic before Jokic was Jokic, right? That big guy that can pass the ball, obviously rebound and shoot the ball, really stretch the floor when kind of the big man was getting kind of lost, right? Where they were saying that the center is gone, right? The center position is dead. Really kind of helped usher in the players that we see today in that role. I don't know if he was playing this season or not out there in Spain, but didn't have probably the ending that he deserved in the NBA, right? I think he was bought out by the Lakers or just straight up waived when he was with the Lakers before he eventually went back to Spain. That season, I think I would have liked him to be picked up by a contender, say, the Nuggets, for example, or, any other team that was contending at that time. But well deserved, enjoy retirement, Mark. You lived up to the hype. Congrats on your championship. Basketball's going to miss you, but, we thank you for what you've done.
Yeah, I think, the biggest thing too with Marc Gasol is like, obviously his brother Pau, when he got traded to the Lakers, Pau was the greatest thing, really the only great thing that the Grizzlies had up until that point. And when they made that trade felt like a cluster of players and a cluster of picks, like they probably just thought like, okay, we just got like a whole lot of stuff and we'll see like what we can do from here. And then one of those picks was Marc Gasol. So, or I guess like technically he was like already the pick.
Yeah, he was drafted already.
Yeah, he was already picked, but like he just wasn't in the NBA at that point. But the point is like one of those being Marc Gasol, like they probably never could have thought like, okay, he's gonna replicate the success of his brother with us, and he did. And maybe some could even say he expanded upon it with the grit and grind era with like him and Zebo and Conley and Rudy Gay for a stretch and Tony Allen and stuff like that. Like Obviously, like if it felt like that was one of the more fun teams to watch too, because it's like some year like between Mark, Zebo, and Conley, like it didn't depending on the year, one of them was probably the key player on the team, and that I think like put teams like that are together for a while, you rarely see them anymore, and that's why it's like really fun to watch those guys, especially. But I mean, Marc Gasol, like you said, one of the better passing bigs as well. And that's why he's like in a way like kind of like a Jokic before Jokic, as you said. Defensive player of the year. I know some people say maybe he didn't deserve it, but I mean, you look at like what he did in kind of transforming that Grizzlies defense in a way that people didn't think could happen. I mean, you got to give him credit there. And I mean, this is a guy who was All NBA several years, All-Star a couple years as well. And overall, I mean, like he had some big moments in the playoffs. Like he had maybe clutch shots, game winners. I remember one time he did like a celebration like this or something like that.
Yeah.
And that it was kind of ridiculous looking on a guy maybe like that big and like maybe looking that ridiculous, but it was just like it was just funny. And he's definitely a player that like you look back in history and you're gonna be like, okay, well he was a key part of this era of basketball, and he is one of those players where it's like you feel good too that he ended up winning a championship because he wasn't really in Toronto all too long, and especially like when he won the championship, he was probably like the shortest tenured player on the team because he got traded like at that deadline that year.
Yeah.
So to come into a system like that and then help contribute to a championship team right away, probably not something he expected at that point in his career. And I mean, he took advantage of it, and so he won a championship like much like his brother, which that's another cool thing too. It's like, there's not a lot of brothers who can say they were all stars together, all NBA together, won a championship as well. Literally, they were the first brothers to tip off against each other in the All-Star game. I remember that was a big thing when it happened too. So, and also like play for their home country together too. So, got to give it to Marc Gasol, definitely a legend, and yeah.
No, I agree entirely. He's a Hall of Fame player. Like I said, we'll see his jersey in the Raptors out there in Memphis. Kind of even cool that I know he, was born and raised for the most part of his life, right, in Spain. But, when Gasol was with the Grizzlies, Paul Gasol was with the Grizzlies, right? I think Mark went to high school in the Memphis area. So, even being that hometown kid and having, they never got over the hump to win a championship, but it was when the game was really starting to speed up. I mentioned earlier today the Warriors, right, and the Splash Brothers era and the high pace offense that they were playing with. When you were going into Memphis to face the Grizzlies, you were in for a battle. Like you mentioned, you had Zebo, Rudy Gay, Mike Conley, Gasol, Tony Allen. Man, that was a squad that you're about to grind. You're going to war for against those guys. So, well deserved for him. Like I said, Hall of Fame career, and like you mentioned, just being able to share those same achievements and success that his brother did. It's just cool to see, and congrats to both Gasol brothers. But in this particular moment that we say goodbye to Mark as an NBA player, again, thank you for the contributions that you've done to the game of basketball, not just in the NBA but on the international platform as well.
And obviously, like his brother, just got in the Hall of Fame. Maybe a couple years from now, we could see Mark in there, and then maybe Pau is like giving an introduction speech. That would be kind of cool if that does happen. But yeah. If you want, we can move on to the final topic, which is a mini game. It is the NBA Fast Money mini game. You guys have seen this before, but if you're a new viewer watching, I'll explain it again. So my guy Willy G here, I'm gonna give him 1 minute to answer NBA related questions. There's gonna be 5 questions, and it's like basically just like Family Feud in the Fast Money part of the show, where I'm gonna say, give me maybe a player with something, and then you got to give me the best answer that you think the survey answered with, and their different point values as well. If I don't specify between a current or former thing, then it could just be anything all time, whether it's a player or team or whatever it may be, and that's pretty much it. Oh, and yeah, if you don't know like a question, let's say you're on number 1, you're like, I don't know, let me pass. You can pass, and I can come back to that at the very end. But yeah, other than that, I don't know. Do you have any questions, or are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's go.
All right, let me start the timer. Okay, in 5, 4, 3, 2, One, give me a current player with a last name that starts with a V.
Ooh, with the V, something that the people would say. Valanciunas.
Okay, give me a player that could be considered the biggest draft bust of all time.
Uh, Kwame Brown.
Okay, give me a great Utah Jazz player from the last 20 seasons.
That's when Caesar's Donovan Mitchell.
Give me a current player coming off the bench for the Orlando Magic this season.
He's been injured most of the season, but I'm going to say Gary Harris.
Okay, and give me an NBA team that has beat the Boston Celtics this season.
Denver Nuggets, only team to beat them at home.
Okay. I put that one there. I had to put a special one there. You guys ended their home streak, so yeah, pretty good answers. But we'll see how you did. So the first one, give me a current player with a last name that starts with a V. You said Jonas Valanciunas. Wasn't a bad answer. That was the third answer on the board. The number one answer was Fred VanVleet.
Oh,
and
yeah,
Chicago Bull was number 2, Nikola Vucevic.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other ones were Valanciunas, Jared Vanderbilt, Devin Vassell, and Gabe Vincent. Got a couple points. So, yeah. Not a bad answer there, but the second one, there were a lot more answers for this one. Give me a player that could be considered the biggest draft bust of all time. You said Kwame Brown. Also a really good answer, although that was also number 3 on the board.
Cool.
Okay. Number 1 was Anthony Bennett.
Yeah, he's probably him and maybe Greg Oden. Now that I'm not with the timer, that's probably who people would probably have said number 2. No.
Actually, number 2 was Darko Milicic, and then 3 was Kwame, then Adam Morrison, and then Greg Oden. And then the other people getting votes were Michael Olowokandi, Hashim Thabit, Sam Bowie, LaRue Martin, and Dragon Bender.
See, with Adam Morrison, he had, I don't know to call him nice seasons, but he had, I wouldn't say bust level seasons with the Bobcats back in the day, and with the Lakers tenure that he had, I don't know what he was doing with his life there, but I wouldn't say he's, at least me personally, I don't think he's up there, but he's a bust, but I don't say he's top all time bust. But
hey, at least he's a champion.
Yeah, exactly,
So,
right. He's got the ring.
So the third question, give me a great Utah Jazz player from the past 20 years or 20 seasons. You said Donovan Mitchell, who was drafted by the Denver Nuggets. And that was a pretty good answer because that was number 1 on the board. Yeah, and number 2 on the board was also drafted by the Denver Nuggets. I'm sure you know who that is. Rudy Gobert, yep. And the other ones on there were Darren Williams, Gordon Hayward, Lauri Markkanen, who's still playing for him, Carlos Boozer, Andre Kirilenko, and Mehmet Okur.
You see, when you first read it, Mehmet Okur was who I thought, just because talk about big dudes that can shoot, right? I think Mehmet in his prime was the only actual center that was shooting threes at the high clip that he was shooting, right? So that's the first thing that came to mind.
It's a good thing you didn't say that because that would only got you 2 points.
Yeah, but he's not, they didn't have much success, right, with the Jazz at that time. Not that the Jazz has had much success, but it wasn't as a popular name, say, as your Carlos Boozers, your Williams, your Rudy Gobert's, your Donovan Mitchell's. But he's the first name that did come to mind, and I was like, let's pause a bit.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing too with this. It's like, even though he was last of these guys, like if you organized it based on like how good they were with the Jazz, he probably wouldn't be last. But I guess he's just not as popular of a name. But yeah, and so the fourth one, give me a current player coming off the bench for the Orlando Magic. You said your guy, Gary Harris. That was on there, although that only got you 5 points. Yeah, I think the injuries are kind of like what, brought it down a little bit, but still overall not a bad answer. The other answers were Cole Anthony, Joe Ingles, Mo Wagner, Anthony Black, Jonathan Isaac, Goga Bitadze, Gary Harris, and then Caleb Houston. So overall, like not too bad, not too bad of an answer. And then number 5 is, hold on a second, I don't know what happened to my questions. Okay, here it is. Give me an NBA team that has beat the Boston Celtics this season. You went with old reliable, the Denver Nuggets. And that was a good answer because that was number one on the board. Got you 26 points. And yeah, so 26 points. Also getting points were the Clippers, who recently beat them, the Bucks, Pacers, Warriors, Sixers, Timberwolves, Magic, Thunder, and Hornets. The Lakers were not on here because that just happened. Yeah. Also, I think you're muted.
There we go. Sorry. Yeah, no, and the Lakers beat them tonight, in Boston. So my statement about Denver being the one that beat them at home only, no longer stands. But potential finals matchup right there, right? Great game that we saw that day. But all reliable, like you said, can't go wrong with some Denver Nuggets.
Of course. And you kind of had a Nuggets theme for at least like three of these, I would say, with Gary Harris and Donovan Mitchell. But yeah, overall, I mean, 95 points. That's not too bad of a score. How do you think you did?
I think I did good. I ain't gonna lie, I haven't caught many Magic games this season. I was gonna say Cole Anthony, but I wasn't sure if he's starting for them or not. So that's why I was like, I'll just go with, old reliable G Harris, Gary Harris. As there's some memes around on Nugget Twitter and so on. And Donovan Mitchell, like I mentioned, wasn't my first name that came to mind. But just probably the most popular player from the Jazz recently, right, within the last decade or so. So, can't go wrong with some D Mitch with some Spider.
Yeah, and even though like I feel like usually like when I break it down based on like past several years or stuff, like people are less prone to put like current players. Like I'm surprised Markkanen actually finished fifth in there. Like
Yeah,
I don't mind it, but I'm a little surprised he got more points than Boozer, Kurylenko, and Mehmet Okur.
mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, overall, I mean, I thought you did pretty good. 95 points. I have to see where that's at. I think that's somewhere in the top half of scores so far for the season. So that's obviously pretty good. But yeah, overall, W performance, and I think it was a W episode. Hopefully you guys enjoyed at home. If you did, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Check out my guy Willy G as well. You got any other final thoughts before we close this thing out?
Like I always say, man, pleasure to talk ball with you. Everybody out there, go watch some ball, go play some ball. Ball is life. It's cool to see the connections, the relationship that basketball has built. So just get out there, enjoy the game, whether you're watching it or playing it. There's always something to do when it comes to ball.
Yes, sir. Well said. And it's actually this season or this week. It's warmed up where I'm at. I don't know how it is out there, but it's starting to warm up. So maybe the outdoor hoops might be happening a little bit earlier this year.
Yeah, with those double rims, but I feel you.
Yeah, the double rims are crazy. But yeah. Anyways, though, hope you guys enjoyed. Again, thank you guys for watching, and we're out. Peace.